Everything you've been taught about debt is incomplete. Since childhood, we've been told the same things. Never borrow money. Pay cash for everything. Debt will ruin your life. And for millions of people, that advice seems true. Credit card debt, car loans, student loans. They've destroyed countless financial lives. But here's the question no one ever asks. If debt is so bad, why do billionaires borrow billions of dollars every single year? Why do real estate investors choose mortgages instead of paying cash? Why do some of the biggest companies in America keep borrowing money, even when they already have billions sitting in the bank? Are they making a huge mistake? Or do they know something that most people never learn? The truth is, debt isn't what makes people poor. Using debt the wrong way does. By the end of this video, you'll understand the difference between the kind of debt that destroys lives and the kind that builds wealth. More importantly, you'll learn how to avoid the financial traps that keep millions of people stuck for decades. Let's begin. The biggest lie about debt. Imagine two neighbors. They both earn about the same salary.
Morning, Gary.
They both drive to work every morning. They both live in nice neighborhoods. From the outside, their lives look almost identical. But behind closed doors,
Dave.
their financial
Gary.
lives couldn't be more different. The first neighbor has 3 credit cards that are nearly maxed out. A luxury SUV with a large monthly payment. A personal loan for a vacation that ended months ago. Every paycheck disappears before the month is over. They're constantly stressed, even though they earn a decent income. The second neighbor also has debt. A mortgage. A business loan. Maybe even an investment property with a loan attached to it. But every month, those assets generate income and increase in value over time. One person's debt makes them poorer. The other person's debt helps build wealth. That's why simply saying debt is bad is one of the biggest oversimplifications in personal finance. Debt isn't the real problem. The purpose behind the debt is. Why most people fear debt. It's easy to understand why debt has such a bad reputation. Every year, millions of Americans struggle to keep up with monthly payments. Interest charges grow. Minimum payments barely reduce the balance. Unexpected expenses force people to borrow even more. Soon, debt becomes a cycle that's incredibly difficult to escape. Many families don't feel like they're working to build wealth. They feel like they're working just to pay bills. That's why so many people associate debt with stress and failure. And honestly, for high-interest debt, that fear is understandable. But here's the mistake. People often assume all debt is equally dangerous. That's simply not true. Saying all debt is bad is like saying all food is unhealthy because fast food exists. There are foods that improve your health, and there are foods that damage it. Debt works the same way. Some forms of debt slowly drain your financial future. Others have the potential to create opportunities that wouldn't exist otherwise. Learning the difference is one of the most valuable financial skills you can develop. Good debt versus bad debt. Let's make this simple. Imagine someone borrows $60,000 to buy a luxury sports car. It looks amazing. Friends are impressed. But every single year, the car loses value. Insurance costs money. Maintenance costs money. Fuel costs money. The loan costs money. Everything about that purchase pulls cash out of their pocket. Now imagine someone else borrows $60,000 to launch a business. They use the money to buy equipment, build a website, market their services, and attract customers. If that business succeeds, it may generate income for years. The same amount of borrowed money produced 2 completely different outcomes. One created a liability. The other created an opportunity. That's the difference between bad debt and good debt. Bad debt usually finances things that lose value and don't generate income. Good debt is often used to acquire assets, education, or businesses that have the potential to increase your earning power or long-term wealth. Notice something important. The bank didn't decide whether the debt was good or bad. The borrower did. How banks really make money. Here's something many people never think about. Banks don't become profitable because people save money. They become profitable because people borrow money. When a bank lends money, it charges interest. That's how it earns revenue. In other words, debt itself isn't considered evil by the financial system. It's one of the foundations of how the modern economy works. Businesses borrow to expand. Farmers borrow to buy equipment. Families borrow to purchase homes. Companies borrow to build factories. Without borrowing, many of the products and services we use every day might never exist. The important lesson isn't to avoid debt completely. The lesson is to understand when debt is helping you and when it's quietly working against you. The power of leverage. Now let's talk about the one word that separates many wealthy investors from everyone else. Leverage. It sounds complicated, but the idea is actually simple. Leverage means using borrowed money to increase your potential returns. Imagine you have $50,000. You could leave it sitting in a savings account where it earns a modest return. Or you could use that $50,000 as a down payment on an investment property or another income-producing asset. If that investment generates rental income or grows in value over time, your original money has the potential to work much harder. That's why many successful real estate investors don't rush to pay cash for every property they buy. They use financing strategically, not because they're broke, but because they want their money working in multiple places at the same time. However, this is where many people get confused. Leverage is powerful, but it's also risky. If the investment doesn't perform as expected, borrowed money can magnify losses just as easily as it can magnify gains. That's why experienced investors never rely on hope. They rely on research, planning, and careful calculations. Why billionaires still borrow? Here's something that surprises many people. Some of the wealthiest people in the world could easily pay cash for almost anything, yet they still borrow money. Why? Because selling valuable investments isn't always the smartest financial move. Imagine you've spent decades building a portfolio that's worth millions of dollars. If you suddenly sell a large portion of it to buy a building or invest in a new project, you might owe a significant tax bill. You also lose the future growth those investments could have generated. Instead, many wealthy individuals prefer to borrow against valuable assets while allowing those assets to continue growing. This strategy isn't for everyone, and it requires careful financial planning. But it demonstrates an important principle. The wealthy don't automatically avoid debt. They ask one question first. Will borrowing improve my financial position over the long term? If the answer is yes, and the risks are manageable, they may choose to borrow. If the answer is no, they walk away. That discipline is what separates strategic borrowing from reckless borrowing. The credit card trap. Now let's talk about one of the most common forms of debt. Credit cards. A credit card isn't inherently good or bad. It's simply a financial tool. When you pay your balance in full every month, a credit card can provide convenience, purchase protection, and rewards. The trouble begins when people treat a credit card like extra income. Buying things today is easy. Paying for them months later, plus interest, is much harder. Many people only make the minimum payment. It feels affordable. But interest keeps adding up in the background. Before they realize it, they're paying far more than the original purchase price. That's why one simple rule can save you thousands of dollars. If you can't realistically pay it off, think carefully before buying it. Using credit responsibly builds financial flexibility. Using it carelessly can limit your financial future. For questions to ask before borrowing. Before taking on any debt, ask yourself these 4 questions. First, will this debt help increase my income, improve my skills, or grow my net worth? Second, can I comfortably make the payments even if my income drops for a few months? Third, am I buying an asset that may appreciate or produce income? Or am I buying something that immediately loses value? And fourth, am I borrowing because it's a smart financial decision? Or because I want instant gratification? These questions may seem simple, but answering them honestly can prevent years of financial stress. The biggest debt myth. One of the biggest myths in personal finance is that successful people have no debt. That's simply not true. Many successful business owners, investors, and homeowners have debt. The difference is that their debt is often connected to assets or investments with the potential to create future value. Meanwhile, someone with no loans at all, but no savings, no investments, and no emergency fund, isn't necessarily in a stronger financial position. Wealth isn't measured by whether you have debt. It's measured by your overall financial health, the assets you own, and your ability to generate income over time. The real question isn't, do I have debt? The better question is this debt helping me build my future, or making my future more difficult? So, is debt good? Or is debt bad? The truth is, debt is neither your enemy nor your best friend. It's simply a financial tool. Used wisely, it can help build businesses, buy homes, fund education, and create opportunities that might otherwise be impossible. Used carelessly, it can lead to years of stress, high interest payments, and financial pressure. The difference isn't the loan. The difference is the decision behind it. Before borrowing money, don't ask, "Can I afford the monthly payment?" Instead ask, "Will this decision move me closer to financial freedom or further away from it?" That one question can completely change the way you manage money. Remember, building wealth isn't about looking rich. It's about becoming financially secure. It's about owning assets that grow over time. It's about making thoughtful decisions instead of emotional ones. And it's about understanding that every financial choice you make today shapes the life you'll live tomorrow. So don't fear debt. Understand it. Use it carefully. Respect the risks. And whenever possible, make sure your money is working for you, not the other way around. Because in the end, financial freedom isn't determined by how much you borrow. It's determined by how wisely you manage every dollar. Call to action. If you found this video valuable, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn
Thanks
on
for watching,
notifications
everyone.
for more
Make sure to
videos
like,
about personal
subscribe,
finance,
and comment below.
investing, and
Comment
building
below
long-term
and let me
wealth.
know.
And before you go, let me ask you one question. Do you think debt is a powerful financial tool, or do you believe it's something people should avoid whenever possible? Share your opinion in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.